1-8, they're gearing up to make their push. The goal is to make their push by dawn, and they're going to get through the pizza slice and continue on south. Now, Alpha Company, so like I said before with the other battalion, 1-8, because it starts with 1st Battalion, you have your ABC, your Alpha, Bravo, and Charlie companies. Now, Alpha Company, they're tasked with establishing a forward position across that pizza slice. So they're north of the pizza slice. They got to go across. Now, this is going to be about 3 a.m. This gunship is going to come in. It's going to strike this building that they're looking to get into. And then they're going to hold up in there and establish their foothold. But that gunship sends a little bit too much love into that building and destroys just destroys it so bad. The Marines, once they get in there, they're like, we can't do this. So do we go back or do we go forward? What do we do? So this is where in 1st Platoon, Alpha Company, Lieutenant Ackerman, he comes up with this plan. He sees something a little bit further south, a little bit more forward than they want it to be. And they go ahead and get up in front of that and get inside and have good field of view, and they're going to hold there till dawn.
So from what I remember hearing about this, this building is almost like a standalone building. So all the avenues of approach are pretty much open to this building, right? Like there's a little bit of standoff from the buildings that are surrounding it, making it very hard to attack on foot if they were to be attacked there.
Right.
But that can also play against them as well, and I feel like we'll find out later.
Yeah, definitely. So Lieutenant Ackerman and his platoon, they're going to hold that forward position till dawn. The Marines, while they're there, they're going to nickname this place the Candy Store, and they're just south of the pizza slice. Here's where things get a little bit interesting. So by dawn, the Marines in this building, in the Candy Store, they start to see enemy insurgents making their way north because they think the enemy's still up by Michigan.
Right.
They're just casually walking through with their rifles.
So they're behind enemy lines. They're sitting there watching, Al Qaeda or insurgent fighters move to positions further north of them, thinking that the Americans are still up there.
Right.
That's crazy, man.
So what do? They're going to ambush the enemy. So they
ambush the ambushers.
Ambush the ambushers. Yep. So they launch an attack. They're inside the Candy Store, and they just start from those good fields of view. They just start laying waste to these guys, killing them and taking them out best they can. However, as more insurgents are coming and their position is now known, they become surrounded and things kind of take like a little bit of a turn. But either way, these guys are going to be fighting, for hours. Now taking casualties, they have issues with getting some of their more of their casualties out. Some of the guys that are really need to get out, they're going to call for like AAVs. They need some type of ground CASEVAC to come through and get them. Unfortunately, their CASEVAC, one of those AAVs gets hit with an RPG, and they got to turn around and go back. They eventually do get rescued by this MAP platoon, this mobile assault platoon, the Humvees, and like the weapons company guys.
Mark 19s and 50 cals.
Yeah,
and
they're all decked
all the big guns.
Yep. So they pop smoke. These guys get to their position. They're able to evacuate some of the casualties, the more serious casualties, out of the building. Now, the rest of the battalion, by 1400, 2 p.m., that's when they start coming through. Now, Lieutenant Ackerman, he's going to get ordered to leave the Candy Store, link up with the rest of the battalion.
Keep that line moving together.
Yep.
So that one side doesn't get too far ahead of the other.
Yeah.
And, well, let's explain. So for those that aren't aware, the reason why you don't want that to happen, if like you think about them moving down together, you don't want one side to get too far ahead of the other because it opens up their flanks, right? Even though we're not fighting in lines of battle like they would in the Civil War, flanking fire is still an issue, right? You only want to have to fight one direction. You don't want to find yourself in the middle of a two-directional gunfight or a multi-directional gunfight like an L-shaped ambush. That's why the L-shaped ambushes are so effective, is because you have to deal with fire coming from two different directions. So even on you have to worry about that on a small scale when your platoon or your company is maneuvering, but you also have to worry about that on the larger scale too, Because if for whatever reason, if insurgent fighters are able to hit their flanks or for somehow sneak in behind them and start attacking that more advanced element from the rear and the front, it can turn into a really, really bad scenario very quickly.
Yeah, and the goal here for these Marines and really this whole battle is not to get bogged down, not to be stationary. So these, like we've seen in the first part of the episode, and now like they're always on the move, like
fast. Speed is the key.
Yeah, the speed and intensity. So, but anyway, these are the orders. Now he's got one problem. He's got his guys inside here, and in this candy store, there's only one entry exit doorway, and they're under some pretty intense fire for a good many hours here, and he kind of wanted to like hang on a little bit and say, hey, maybe we can, because we can't get out that door, maybe we can push this off a few more hours till sunset maybe, and cover of darkness get out. But that's not what was coming down the chain. So he's gonna stick his head out there, take a little eyeball, little look-see, and find out that he's just getting peppered. They got this door dialed in. So
like we were talking about, that open field of fire that was an advantage before is now becoming an obstacle.
Right.
Because with one entrance in, the insurgents know where they're going to be trying to exit the building, and there is no cover out there.
Right.
So that's a tough scenario to find yourself in.
Tough scenario. Well, actually, 2 Abrams tanks are going to be dispatched over to their location. So they're on their way over there, but they still got to figure out how to get out. So they got a combat engineer with them. And he's like, hey, I'll just blast our way out the back, and we'll just assault through there and do it that way. So he rigs it up. This Marine rigs it up. C4, bam, blows a hole. The Marines go out.
Dude, C4 is some fun stuff to play with, man.
Yeah, it is some fun stuff to play with. I couldn't imagine being in the same building that I'm blowing up. They obviously get to one side and get away from that because you don't need a lot.
Later on, we're going to talk about a satchel charge in one of the stories. And this makes me think of a story of ours. We were both assaultmen. So in the Marine Corps, you can, inside of infantry, there are multiple jobs, right? You can be an 0311, which is a rifleman. You can be an 0331, which is a machine gunner. An 0341 is a mortarman. And then an 0351 is an assaultman. And an assaultman, our job was to shoot the SMAWs, the rocket launchers, shoulder-fire multi-purpose assault weapon, big rocket, and they are a blast to shoot. But they do leave you feeling slightly concussed after you shoot one. They're a monster. And the other element of our job was demolitions. Breaching demolitions, cutting charges for setting up ambushes, things like that. But part of our training, early on is demolitions. Do you remember when they took us out to the demolition range there on Camp Geiger?
Yeah, definitely.
And we went out. We did all this. We did all kind of different charges that day. We did some cutting charges, and the way they finished up the day, we had a satchel charge left, a full satchel charge, which is a monster boom. That thing, that's a lot of C4, and they rigged it up to an artillery cannon. You remember this?
Yeah, definitely.
And
sure.
I remember they put it in. They put this satchel charge inside the barrel of this artillery cannon, and we all went back. How far away do you think the bunker was? Maybe 200 yards?
Yeah, I'd say 2. Yeah.
All right. Well, we moved
far.
like 200 yards back and got into this blast-proof bunker, and they're fire in the hole, fire in the hole, fire in the hole. Like pull the time fuse, that thing goes off, and I remember hearing this chunk. When I say chunk, it was maybe the size of my desk chunk of this barrel that had been flattened, broken off and flattened out. It probably landed another 200-300 yards behind where we were at.
Yeah, it went right over us.
And we went and found it. You could hear it going through the air. It sounded like a freaking freight train, and that's that's just some C4. That's how strong it is. So to use C4 inside of a building. I remember when we did an op with the British Army in Afghanistan, and we had pushed real far, like maybe 10, 15 clicks north of our fob, and put up a blocking position, and we were doing patrols out of that for like a month. And we took over this compound, and we went in to take over this compound, and we needed to establish some fighting positions. But trying to do a pickaxe through these mud compound walls is impossible. You're not going to get through it. Like
Nah.
you can drop, like I said earlier in the last episode, you can drop a 500-pound bomb on them jokers, and it ain't doing nothing to them.
They're still standing.
It blows my mind how that happens. But we had to cut a hole in it somehow for a machine gun position. So we the one time I got to use demolitions in Afghanistan,
You make a shape charge?
made a big freaking shape charge.
Oh, cool.
We almost took out the whole wall. Luckily, it ended up working out all right. We, with some sandbags, we were able to make it a really good position. But the noise of the blast being inside the compound with it was intense, to say the least. It was intense, to say the least. It was it's everything reverberates. That you have that rebounding. What did they call that? The rebounding overpressure. And essentially overpressure is like the shock wave of an explosion. If you have an explosion go off inside of a room or a set of walls, that overpressure is going to hit the walls and bounce back twice as strong as it was when it hit the wall initially. Especially if it's a confined space, it's just going to keep bouncing and bouncing and getting stronger and stronger. Luckily, there was no roof over the part we were blowing up, so we didn't have to worry about too much of that rebounding overpressure.
I was going to say, with a roof, that overpressure would raise that roof up and out.
It's just it's crazy. But needless to say, it's a big boom, and you feel it for sure.
Yeah, these guys, this urban combat, you hear and feel everything from inside these buildings, and so 1-8, this platoon, many casualties at this time. Some of the worst casualties, they've already gotten out. They get out of this hole in the back of the building that's been breached. They link up with these 2 Abrams tanks and the rest of the battalion, and they continue to work their way further south. Now, here's another issue these guys run into. They're going to encounter enemy fighters everywhere. It's a 360-degree battle. So now they're pushing through narrow streets.
They're not behind cover anymore.
Not behind cover. Maybe a few of them with the tanks, but even with tanks, I don't think really you lead with tanks. You lead with the Marines on the ground. And as they're coming down through these streets, the insurgents had locked up like every gateway. So every compound, like we said before, has these courtyards with these metal gates, like these double swinging gates. They're all locked. So anytime the Marines come under fire, they can't get off.
They're stuck in
the
that
street.
They're stuck in that causeway of death.
Yes, that's a good way of putting it there. And so yeah, they gotta keep the head on the swivel, fight through that, try to locate distance, directions, call things out. If you see something, say something. Attack it. Put some rounds down on it. These tanks, the enemy, they're hitting these tanks with RPGs, which isn't doing much to the Abrams tanks, but still, the fact of the matter is they're dedicated to the fight, and they're throwing everything they can at the Marines. Now, once 1-8 had reached phase line friend, they're going to continue down into I don't know how to say it properly, but the Jubail district.
Works for me.
The J district. So 1-3 was also in the area. So like as 1-8 had rapidly, as they're coming through, pushing through these narrow streets, as they had cleared their way through it, 1-3 had gone through like more in a sweeping motion and had found buildings that were occupied by insurgents that were already cleared by 1-8. So the urban environment is always
it's always changing,
and it's always evolving, and everybody's maneuvering on everybody. So yeah, it was like a run and gun battle, and another battalion's going to do something similar to that as well. So, but as these guys are doing this run and gun street fight, they're going to take real bad casualties, and to the point where the lead squad is going to get banged up hard enough that they'll fall back, and the next squad will take the front, and they'll keep going and just same thing, just running into the meat grinder, fighting their way through until they get to their objectives, rotating the way they did. So after about 1,000 meters, which is a whole kilometer, 1-8's going to consolidate, and they're going to go firm, meaning they're going to stop, they're going to find a spot, hold up in there, and make that their area of operations and kind of do what they got to do. Now, Lieutenant Ackerman and his platoon, this is crazy. They began the day with 46 Marines, combat effective in their platoon. By the end of the day, only 21 Marines remained combat effective.
That's crazy. That's crazy.
I mean, it's 25 Marines.
More than 50%.
More than 50% in one day, and it's like not even a whole day, but it's a long day regardless. They start at 3 a.m. and so thankful to corpsmen on the ground with the Marines, doing what they do.
I heard a saying from this. I don't know if this was. I don't want to steal it from you if you're getting ready to say it, but we were watching an interview with Ackerman about this. And I don't know if it was him or somebody else that was like a part of the interview, but someone had said the company first sergeant or somebody showed up to this house, their final position, and there's just tons of wounded downstairs. And he starts asking, "Who's in charge here? Who's in charge here?" And one of the wounded Marines looks up and says, "Doc's in charge here."
Right, right.
That's the kind of fight they're in.
That's the kind of fight.
The corpsman is in charge right now.
Yep, because at that point, when he had came into that ground level part of the building, that's where the wounded were staged. Ackerman was up on the roof, coordinating, rotating his squads through, different parts of the building to do whatever they got to do. But yeah, Doc's in charge. So thank goodness for corpsmen.